Now that we've got this producer emitting events, filling up our queue with work to be done, we have to figure out a way to process the work in a serverless fashion. There's a couple different things to consider here. So if there wasn't serverless technology, how would you process this? Well, one of the things you would do is you'd probably provision a server. You would tell that server to launch a few processes or threads, and then it would periodically ask for events from SQS. And that's an okay approach, but that's really a pull-based approach. It's a legacy or older approach to processing events. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use these cloud-native concepts, and we're going to attach a Lambda to SQS, and we're basically going to tell this Lambda, listen, anytime there's a message that appears in the SQS queue, as fast as you possibly can, I want you to spin up a Lambda function and then run it and process that message in the queue. Once you've processed it, I want you to then delete it, and then that way we don't process the same message again. What we're going to actually do is we're going to go through and grab the name of that company, go to Wikipedia, grab whatever page is available for that company's Wikipedia page. In the case of Google, it'll say something about that it was founded by a couple PhD students at Stanford, et cetera, et cetera. We'll grab that, and then we'll do a transformation step where we call an AI API. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to call the off-the-shelf AI API called AWS Comprehend, and then we're going to get the sentiment analysis of that producer. So once we've done that, then we're going to take that data and we're going to put it into S3 as an artifact. So that really gives us the full round trip where we're both producing events and we're also consuming those events and doing some things with them. So to get started here, I'm going to need to create another Lambda function, and again, that has a trigger that associates with SQS. So to do that, I'm going to again go over to this icon here. I'm going to say, we'll call this producer AI, and we'll go to runtimes and we'll say Python 3.6, empty Python. For function trigger, again, it's going to be triggered on an event, so that's going to be the trigger. We don't need to do anything special here. And for role, though, again, this is really critical. This will trip you up if you don't think ahead here, is that we're going to need to choose a role that has administrative privileges for development, or specifically the privileges in production that we would use. In this case, we're going to need to be able to listen to SQS, and we're also going to need to be able to call comprehend. That's a second privilege. And we're also going to need to write the data to S3. So we need 3 different levels of privileges. So again, for development, to make things easy for demo, I'm just going to use this administrative role. And now I go through and I say finish. Once I've finished that, now I can go in and actually write some source code that allows this to happen. So I'm going to paste in some code here. And again, I'll walk through step by step what this code does. So step 1, what I do is I import some JSON code. And then step 2 is I go through and I use the Budo3 library, which is the Python SDK. I then also use pandas to do some data processing. I use a Wikipedia library that allows me to pull pages from the Wikipedia website. And then I also have a string.io library, which allows me to read some data. So step 1, again, logging is critically important here. I use Python JSON logger, and I actually have some structured log messages, and that allows me to query things in a structured way. Step 1 is I write a function that allows me to query SQS. So you can see what this would look like if you call it. You make an instance of whatever the queue is called. I then look at the queue attributes here, and then I return back the instance of that queue so I can do things for that queue. This is a SQS connection. This makes a client. This next piece of code here, it gives me an approximate count. So if I ever wanted to do something sophisticated where I figure out how many messages are in the queue and maybe send a message that I need to spawn more workers in the future, this would be a good way to accomplish that. And then I also have a SQS message here that allows me to, or function that allows me to delete the message after I process the work. You can see here it's pretty straightforward. I say SQS client, you give me the queue, and then I run SQS client delete message. Finally, I then write a function that takes the Wikipedia page that I'm going to grab, and again, I get that from DynamoDB, and I append it into this data frame. So each one of these companies will generate a new data frame. Finally, I write an apply function in pandas that allows me to apply sentiment analysis for each one of the rows that are in that data frame. And you can see here, I say comprehend detect sentiment. Just again, a couple lines of code to do sentiment analysis if you use an AI API. Then finally, I apply that sentiment, and then I also have a function here, write S3, which what it does is it takes the data frame that I've created and it writes out that whole data frame into Amazon S3. Finally, the last piece of code here is the actual handler, right? So all these serverless functions have to have a handler. And this one does, in fact, take an event, though. What's different about this one than the producer is that this will be an SQS-based event. So again, it's listening to SQS. So I have to understand how to process that SQS event. What I do here is I have a receipt handle here, and it looks like this, and I have an event source ARN. So these are really the structure of parsing that SQS event. And then what I do is I say, for every record that's in the event, and again, these are going to be single payloads, I'm going to capture that company name here. I'm going to put it inside this list. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the message from the queue because I've now processed the thing I'm supposed to process. Next, I go to pandas. I make that data frame that we talked about earlier. I take the data frame and I apply sentiment analysis to it. And then finally, I write the message to S3. So again, this is a full round trip allowing us to do sentiment analysis on data that was originally generated from another serverless function. So now that I've got all that set up, the only thing I'm going to need to do is the same thing I did last time, which I'm going to need to go through and set up all the packages. So I'm going to cd into this function here. Now I'm going to go into Producer AI. So I'm going to go into Producer AI here. And I again see a virtual environment, so I'm going to source that virtual environment, and then I'm going to, by doing v bin activate. Now that I have access to it, I can go one lower level, and I'm going to use that same technique I used before, where I'm going to do the pip install target one level up, right? So that it'll be packaged in with my code. So step one, I'm going to say pip install. And then I'll put the name of the package, which will be Boto3. And then I'll do -- target. And that will be one directory up. Okay, that looks like that works. Next, I'm going to need to install pandas. So I'll do the same approach. Install pandas. Great, that looks like that's going to work. Okay. And I'm also going to need to install this Wikipedia library. Okay, so let's go ahead and install Wikipedia. Okay, and then there's also going to be the need to install Python JSON logger. That's that JSON logging library that we're using. Okay, Python JSON logger. Great. So now that that's set up, I've got all my packages installed locally. It's ready to deploy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this Producer AI function, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say deploy. There we go. So now that that's deploying, I can go back to my Lambda here, and I'm going to look at other Lambda functions and see this. This thing should be popping up here in a second.